Hey, this is John Harcher giving everybody a quick Lord of the Rings update here since it kind of came out of nowhere as we're waiting in between seasons to see when Rings of Power will show up. Supposedly, season two will show up in 2024, so we got another year to wait. So, as everybody probably already heard, there's going to be some new Lord of the Rings related movies coming from Warner Brothers. They signed a deal with the rights holders to the Tolkien books, what do you call it, Embracer Media. I think there's some video game company from Sweden or something like that. Somehow they made the best bid for it. But apparently, Warner Brothers, or is it Warner Discovery now? Does it go from WB to WD? Apparently they must have really wanted to do something with it because they went right right after this. I think the bid was accepted like 6 months ago. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that Embracer took control of it, so they must have went right into negotiations. I know David Zaslav has done a lot of trimming, but apparently this is something he really wants. Like kind of like Bezos wanted it, so that's why he bid all kind of money. So it would be interesting to see exactly what Warner Brothers is paying to do these movies that they're coming up with now. Again, we're fighting over the same real estate because the Tolkien estate has only okayed using The Hobbit and the three Lord of the Rings books, including the appendices. Now that we've done both The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings in total, everybody's playing with the appendices, which is about, I don't know, was it like 70 pages worth of stuff? I mean, there's a lot in there, but it's like that's just it. It's Amazon is basically taking care of the second age and whatever they can play with the first age on the Rings of Power on television. So Warner Brothers can use those books for anything else. The only thing they can't do is they can't make a streaming show, so they can't put a show on HBO Max. Amazon has those rights locked up. So the main question is and they've ruled out remakes because the confusing thing is okay, they're not going to remake Lord of the Rings because it's like that was so successful the way it is. And then The Hobbit, interestingly, the rights to distributing anything to do with The Hobbit are held by MGM, and MGM's new owner is Amazon. So it's like everything is so muddled with this. So basically, Warner's has I think they kind of hinted they're going to stay with the third age, which is the back half of where The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings took place. So now, what do they have there to work with? Originally, one of the pitches for the TV show was kind of like, their version of Young Sheldon, basically young Aragorn, because Tolkien did write a lot about his youth and how he grew up with Elrond and how he fell in love with Arwen and all that, and how he at some point hunted for Gollum on his own. So if I were to guess, I would say that's going to be the first place they're going to go because they already have like pitches for it laid down, ideas for it. And plus, it's characters people can relate to. They can bring back Hugo Weaving as Elrond. They can maybe work Kate Blanchett in as Galadriel. Maybe even Liv Tyler as Arwen. If you're going to get audiences to leave their house and go to the theater and see something, it's got to be something that they recognize. It's got to be something they're used to, something they know to expect. And this is probably the most likely thing to do because notice Warner Brothers was admittedly in some kind of fight with the Tolkien estate about the War of the Rohirrim anime movie, but it looks like this will smooth that over. I would guess this whole thing had something to do with that, so not to lose their chance to make this movie. It's related to some of the things in Lord of the Rings. That's why they have Miranda Otto coming back to do Eowyn to narrate it, since it was part of the early years of Rohan. But they're kind of doing it anime because it's like people are like, oh, geez, it's like, do I want to go to the theaters and sit through a trilogy of movies about that? No, but okay, kind of. It's kind of off to the side. So that's probably the kind of what they're thinking about that. So as far as what else they could do, Nerd of the Rings on his YouTube page came out listed a bunch of ideas. He listed Young Aragorn as one of them. An interesting idea that he mentioned of is what was going on in the north while the War of the Ring was going on in the south, where that's what was depicted in Lord of the Rings. What you could do in the north is it involved dwarves and men, because that's near Erebor and near Dale, which is where the Hobbit took place. So you can kind of tie that in there and have that related. Some of the people, I think they said maybe Dane Ironfoot would still have been around at that point. So if they were to do something like that, I would speculate Peter Jackson would have to be involved, because this would tie into his movies. He could tie it in. It might be an interesting choice. I think it's a little bit out there to do that, but it might be worth a shot. The other couple things you mentioned, and from my going over the appendices recently, just after the news came out, I kind of agree these are the two other areas they could use. The birth of Rohan with Errol the Young, because Tolkien for some reason wrote a lot about that particular era, and the fall of Arnor, which is the sister city of Gondor that was founded when Elendil left Numenor. So we actually may see the founding of that somewhere during the Rings of Power series. So there might be a tie-in, almost like a middle piece between the Rings of Power and the Lord of the Rings. The fall of Arnor, which also dealt with Angmar, and the leader of Angmar became the leader of the Nazgul, who we saw in the Lord of the Rings. And supposedly that takes place over 600 years, so they might be able to make 3 movies out of that. I wouldn't suggest doing that first. I think they really need to establish kind of the anthology idea about this first, that we can do numerous stories. We can do, it's almost kind of like what the Netflix deal is supposedly with Conan the Barbarian, that they just haven't done anything with yet. I mean, they had the rights to do anything. They could do a TV show. They could do a movie. They could do animation of some kind. They could do anything, and they've done nothing so far. And Frederick Malberg over there was like, yeah, something might be coming. Like, oh, okay. It's like right now Netflix is at such a point where it's like, they're canceling everything under the sun except for Wednesday. That's like the only thing left. So maybe this will actually act as an impetus for them to spur them on to, okay, maybe we should start going with this Conan stuff. So if I were to guess, there's something to do with Aragorn during his youth. That would be my best guess as where they would at least start. Then the Nazgul, Angmar, Arnor. I think that might be a good place to go. And the War in the North idea is actually not a bad idea. But I would suggest if Peter Jackson, Fran Walsh, and Philippa Boyens are all being kept in the loop, is the way they put it. So if they were to keep in the loop and keep him really wired in, and maybe get him to go back one more time, take one more bite of the apple, it would probably be a good idea to let him do that. But with the other ones, kind of let other people, like if they were to do the Angmar Arnar stuff, let somebody else try that. Give it to somebody else who really knows what they're doing, and so we'll get a different view of Middle Earth from that point of view. So anyway, this was just off the top of my head to do this little update. We're not going to see anything, I would bet, until after the War of the Rohirrim comes out in 2024. I would have probably held off doing this deal until after it came out and see how it does, but that's not the way the business works these days. You just have to make your deals and lock up your release dates and work best you can to meet that. And then if something happens, you rejigger things on the fly, like with what Marvel just had to do with the Marvels. Originally, it was supposed to be, I think, in the summer, and then they said, all right, we need a little bit more time to work on this, so they pushed it back to November. So it'll be an interesting time coming up. So we'll see if we'll see who they get to work with the theatrical versions, and then we'll see if this spurs on the Amazon people to maybe up their game a notch. Maybe bring in some better known actors. Again, no slight on the people there directly, but it would be interesting to see someone who's kind of established be on the show that would kind of give it a little bit more weight than what it is. Maybe we'll see that in season 2. Doesn't look like that at the moment, but we'll see where it ends up. So anyway, thanks for listening, and I'm about 2/3 of the way through the next Conan episode, and then I have one more after that to deal with Conan the Conqueror, aka Hour of the Dragon, and then what happened to him afterwards. So hopefully that'll all be done by the end of April, and then we'll move on to hopefully end of March, actually, not even end of April. And then we'll move on to, I think Edgar Rice Burroughs is where I want to head to next. Unless something else comes up with Lord of the Rings, and then I'll go for there. So anyway, thanks for listening. I'll talk to you next time.